All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is a new feature we're trying with the R3 community. We're calling it a listening session. We might come up with a better name afterwards, but we're here to bring together some opportunities from partners that are working on projects for R3 coordinators and other R3 professionals within the R3 community to work on. We're featuring 3 sessions today, which are all funded by multi-state conservation grants. These sessions are a year long, or projects are going to be a year long, and the opportunity to engage is actually right now. So this is perfect timing for you guys to jump on board. Today we have joining us from the Archery Trade Association, Dan Forrester and Josh Gold. From Responsive Management, Andrea Cresone. And then from Southwick Associates, Rob Southwick and Lisa Parks. They'll be presenting throughout the session. We expect presentations to take about 30 minutes. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions and answers. If you have any questions or comments, please post them in the chat session that's on the bottom right-hand corner. We'll leave questions for the end, and then we'll address each person that the question's relevant to and allow them some time to talk. If you have any other ideas or thoughts, also share them so that we can continue the conversation after this session. All of the presentation materials will be shared with a recording of this webinar, which will be posted on the R3 community. And also, if you RSVP'd, we'll be emailing out the presentations after this session. So if there's some notes you want to follow up on, you'll have them at your hand. So to begin our session, we're going to start with Dan Forrester. Dan Forrester is the Vice President of Conservation and Government Relations for the Archery Trade Association, and he's here to share with you about an interesting and exciting email campaign. And so while I bring that up, Dan, would you like to begin?
Great. Thank you, Sam. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually going to present the first part of the conversation,
which is coming up
on behalf of the Do what?
I'm getting it up right now.
So I'm going to be presenting the first part of the conversation, and if you would, cue that other document. There you go. Thanks, Sam. So I'm going to talk about the ongoing study we have right now, which is important because it sets the stage for the multi-state grant project, which is the focus of today's seminar. And then I'm going to ask Andrea Cresone to detail the opportunity specifically that avails for states to participate in our reactivation study. So last year about this time, we started working on a reactivation campaign where we were intending to engage a couple of states with an email campaign research and survey project designed to target bow hunters that may have lapsed. We would send them a variety of messages, a social message, an aesthetic message, kind of a recreation image, and a hunting success image, and determine if there was differential lift being defined as somebody ultimately purchasing a license that had lapsed, based on one of those different message themes, as well as a variety of timing schedules. So the concept was simply engage those states, get their license database, target these messages, and determine whether or not their actions resulted in purchasing a license one or actually participating in hunting. I wish I could tell you we had the result from that study, but we don't yet. We're still getting the license data from all the participating states, and we're also following up with an email survey of those persons that received one of those email messages to better inform their response, their motivations, and their reaction to the different messages and the timing that we gave them. So you can see that we had Florida, Georgia, Indiana, New Jersey, and Oklahoma that participated in this study. So once we get the survey out to them and get those back, I anticipate in the next couple months we'll have information to detail the relative success that we had with this campaign. The good news is that it's relatively easy for states to participate in because it's simply an email campaign. As long as you've got a robust database of your licensed buyers and the ability to communicate them through email, then there was relatively little cost to states to participate in this project. So as we did that, we knew we wouldn't learn everything from that initial effort. So we did put in for a multi-state grant last year. That was basically a second phase of that particular study. Very similar in scope in that we anticipate that this would be an email campaign designed at licensed buyers that would be segmented according to their license history purchase. We would target those individuals as well with a variety of themes and timing based on what we learned from the initial survey. We knew that we would have to tweak some of the messages. We might even throw one or more of the options out if the list was not there, and essentially refine the study funded under the multi-state grant project with the information that we collected with those 5 initial states. So where we find ourselves at now is we're still completing the fine-tuning of the protocol for the coming year in terms of messaging and timing, but we are actively looking for states to participate in this new effort. We'd certainly love to have those 5 states that participated last year, and we've got commitments from most of those, but we're also interested in casting a wider net. Because it's an email campaign, the cost is relatively low. There is some analysis on the back end of which we're happy to do with the grant funds, and therefore we're most interested with today's effort is sharing with all of you the details of what would be required for you in your state to participate in this next phase. We obviously have a lot of work to do because deer season in some states is going to start as early as August, but certainly in September and October. So between now and then, we'll work fiercely with all those that are interested to try and get us in a position where we can have many states participate. So with that, I think I'm going to turn this over to Andrea and let her kind of detail what states would be required to have in order to participate with this multi-state grant project. Andrea?
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. Can everybody hear me? Yes, ma'am. Okay, great. Okay. As Dan mentioned, I was going to go over the requirements for participating in the study. As he mentioned, we will be needing the license database so that we can segment your license buyers or your license holders into different groups in terms of how often they purchase a license, how many years it's been since they purchased the license, and so we'll need the previous 5 years of license records to do that. And then we will then again need the license database after the completion of the hunting season, during which we send out the email campaigns. The data would need to include some identifying information such as name, type of license, and of course we'll just need the licenses that have the bow hunting privileges, however your state does that, as well as other kind of socio-demographic information such as age, if you have it, and region or county of residence to help us with that segmentation. And then after the email campaign, we'll be able to match up all those who have purchased the license since the email campaign to what they had done in the previous 5 years in terms of license buying. We will also work with each state that participates on the emails themselves. So the state would need to provide state-appropriate images if they prefer to use their own images. But we will, of course, work with you. We have some images, ATA has some images, and we can work with you to pick the best ones for the email campaigns. And you can also do as much as you would like in terms of helping with the email development. Each state, if you have a designer on staff that you would like to work with, you would like us to work with to design the emails, that's fine. We can also design them here at Responsive Management and work with you to get those out. But in the end, the state would need to have their own email campaign system, a system that you use to regularly contact
your license holders by email so that we can have you send it out and it comes directly from the state agency. In addition to that, we would just need a contact person at the state agency who's going to be responsible for making sure that the email campaign goes out on their end and can be kind of a liaison between us and whoever else is going to be working on that email campaign, whether it be design or sending it out or getting the databases. And I guess also that contact would be responsible for working with us in terms of making sure that we have all the applicable hunting season dates for bow hunting correct, and to make sure that we have the email campaign lined up as it should be with the hunting season dates, and so that it goes out in a timely manner. And I think really that is all. We'll just need to work with each state individually to determine the exact email send dates, and that will come from your hunting season as well as using the results of the current study to kind of get an idea of what timing worked best previously. I think that's really all I had. I'm welcome to answer any questions at the end about further state participation, and if any states that haven't talked with Dan Forrester want to talk with us and offer up their participation in the study, that would be great. We look forward to doing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan and Andrea. We appreciate that. It's a great opportunity to engage on the email marketing side of the fence, which is a huge thing that we've had some success in doing on the fishing side, and now we can apply it to the hunting side as well. Another project that we'd like to highlight today is regarding data dashboards. This project is sponsored by the American Sport Fishing Association, and Liz Ogilvie is the contact for that project. And on behalf of Liz and ASA, Rob Stopwick and Lisa Parks are here to present on this project, and then also to give an update on the Improving Angler Recruitment Events project. So Rob, would you like to take it away?
All right, thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. I know many folks have heard of data dashboards. We have about 6 states with them in place. I see a few are on the call here. But if you have any questions, whether you're familiar or not familiar, we look forward to that at the end. So starting right here, as Sam mentioned, we're going to begin first with data dashboards. That'll be most of the emphasis here in the presentation. Data dashboards are really, they began as an idea, as a way for states to actually track, monitor whether R3 efforts are working. They began actually out with the WAFWA region. Oregon was the first to step up. Chris Willard was the one that led the effort out there. The idea was to develop a series of metrics that allows the state to track whether R3 efforts are working, whether it's statewide or a county level effort, without having to wait every 5 years for detailed survey data to come out. They want to have something a little more closer to real time. The first dashboards that we built for Oregon were on paper. It was about an 1.5-inch stack of tables, took a long time, and we quickly realized this whole thing needed to be done electronically, hence we use, on top of analytical software, we use Tableau. So that's what dashboards do. It gives us a means to finally understand if all of our work and investments in R3, if they're taking us in the right direction or if things need to change. As Sam had mentioned, the lead partner in this project is American Sport Fishing Association. But I do want to stress this project began originally from the state agencies. ASA took the lead, along with a number of other partners. In addition to ASA, who put in some matching cash to this project, we also have the Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation, who is a major cash contributor to this project, along with the National Shooting Sports Foundation as a major contributor, and the Archery Trade Association also as a cash contributor. In addition, the AFWA's Tech and Data Committee is partnered with this project, along with the Council of Advanced Hunting and Shooting Sports, the National Marine Manufacturers Association, and the National Wild Turkey Federation. And these groups all came together because they also see the need. As they're investing in R3, they want to have an idea, are investments working? Are changes needed? And then a lot of individual companies are interested in getting involved with states and R3 efforts, but they're having the same questions. Hence, dashboards will help states and national efforts track what's happening, what we need to do next. So with dashboards, we have 6 in place right now.
We have a grant that was, again, submitted by these partners that we just mentioned. And with the grant, we'll develop regional dashboards with at least 4 states per region. And then nationally, we're looking to have 16 states that will serve as indicator states for the rest of the country. And then other states will begin their own dashboards. We can build them in over time. To participate in this project, I'll go over this real quick, and then we'll actually show you what the dashboards look like. Each state that wants to participate needs to have 10 years of electronic license data. We need to have 10 years. There's a few states that want to participate but don't have that many, but we really have to have apples-to-apples comparisons in order to merge everybody together into regional and national dashboards. The cost is a cost-share arrangement where the grant will pay half the cost for the first year of the project. So the total cost for the first year is about $17,000 to develop the first dashboard and do the first update. So we ask the states to pay half that cost. And then for the second year, when it's just 2 updates, we ask the states to pick up the full cost, which would be $9,000 for the full year. We do want states to put funds into the effort. The idea is that the project will continue on its own through state direct funding afterwards. So we want to make sure states have, to use the phrase, skin in the game to really assess whether the project is of value and whether it should continue after the first 2 years. So at this point, let's go ahead and start looking at what is a data dashboard. The name is very common. You read about it in the general media about dashboards. And what they do is allow you to visualize trends. It allows you to visualize what's going on within your data. And the word dashboard is just that. There are gauges on a dashboard like you'd have in a car. And you can have gauges in here that show you the trends over time, whether it's participation or whether it's changes in the churn rate and license sales. You can have absolute values in these gauges, such as the number of people who are buying licenses and the percentage of the state who's participating in activities. And then you can have distributions. You can compare one year to another and see how things change from time to time. So each one of these are different types of gauges as you have on this overall dashboard. And then when you update these, some states are updating them quarterly. We ask at least every 6 months. The national dashboard and regional dashboards will be done on a 6-month basis at first. But as you update them over time, then we can start identifying the trends and gives you more value back out of the dashboard. This very tough to see picture, especially if you're looking at this on a cell phone, this is the actual dashboard for Oregon. Again, Oregon was the pioneer state in developing the dashboards. What you have here is information presented for 4 major topics. Basically, on the left-hand side, there's a column, and that's the participation data. These are the number of licenses sold by state, and you can present the information, quickly change it for for any type of license or all licenses collectively. So this is information we want every state to report as base information in the dashboard because we want to do this nationally. The second type of information we produce is participation rate. This is the percentage of the state population that participates or buys a license for each type of activity. It helps us understand what the relevancy of these activities are over time to the state. Third category is number of new recruits. So the first of the 3 R's this helps us understand are the number of new recruits going up over time. And we see here over the 7-year period that we've had a steady increase by residency, by gender, and by age group for the number of people coming in buying a license for the first time. Disregard that little drop there at the end because this is 3rd quarter information and just drop because they don't have a full year's worth of data yet in that last quarter. And then the 4th type of information dashboards are reporting is the churn rate. This addresses retention. So if the state retention efforts go into play, the idea, if we do it right, is that the trend over time will go down in the churn rates as we get more people to renew their license and not drop out. What you would do with the dashboard is it runs on the Tableau software. That's free. It's just like Adobe. You download the Tableau reader. We would run the file, or maybe done internally within your state, and then the file's converted to Tableau. And what you can do as a user is anybody in your state can take the file, and you can click. You can see in the top towards the center right where it says permission. On the actual dashboard, you click on there, and you can select the type of license you'd like to see the metrics for. Or you can select all licenses. And then all the gauges below will automatically change to show you the type of license you selected. You can select the quarter or the time period you're looking for and the year. So it allows you as a program manager to quickly go through your data and identify the trends to see where in the state changes might be happening. Those are the maps in the bottom. Where changes are happening by demographic, whether it's by gender or by age, and more. You don't need to have an analyst on hand to go through the full license database and run these numbers for you every time because they're pre-run and put into a Tableau dashboard for you to use. Going on to the next page. So after the first dashboard was created in Oregon, a few other states started launching them. That's when it started getting the eyes of the national partners. And we saw some definite applications at the regional and national level. First thing is to identify macro trends, what we see going on across the states. This is just 3 of the dashboards. There's 6 in place right now, but what we've seen so far in all 6 of the dashboards is this uptick in participation in women participating in activities, I believe this is fishing, has been going up steady. And it's unique in all the states, while we've seen decreases generally in male participation. What we're also seeing typically in lots of cases is uptick in the first half of this decade in millennial participation. A little more uncertain in Wisconsin, but in the other 5 states, we're seeing a definite increase in participation in the younger age groups, but we're still seeing a downward drop in license purchases among the Gen X generation, which we're dubbing the lost generation when it comes to license sales. But as they have more dashboards, and sample size of 6 across 50 states is still not solid enough yet to go out there and develop national strategies and declare trends. So with the national dashboard, when we have 16 states in place, we feel we'll have a good representation. The more states will join over time, and then we can start developing programs to really address the trends, and we can see what the responses are to national programs in place. Now, the advantage to industry, for example, is a lot of companies are being asked to get involved, to contribute, whether it's time or money or product, and they're interested, but a lot of them say, hey, we need to justify, we have to show our own managers that the money is doing something useful. So they're very interested in seeing dashboards. They can understand where the problems are, where to invest, and then monitor whether the design strategies are effective or not. So those are dashboards. At this point, Sam, I should roll on to the second project.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob.
Okay. So again, we'll take questions on dashboards afterwards here, but there's a second project that's also sponsored by American Sport Fishing Association. This is also a multi-state conservation grant. And just like the first one that mentioned here, we're waiting for the grant papers to be issued. As we understand, they're being processed right now, so they'll officially kick off, hopefully in a matter of just of a week or two. This effort began off the similar discussions within industry, and that is there's a constant number of local fishing events, whether they're classes or one-day-only events, who are requesting funds and support, whether it's from the state agencies, whether it's from private companies, or from volunteer groups. A lot of people are asking for support. And the people who are being asked to be donors are asking, which events had the highest probability of success? Where should I invest our limited dollars, because we can't support all of them? And that's what this project is going to test, is we want to identify what are the factors and essentially the best practices that result in youth and adult fishing programs that have the greatest success in recruiting new anglers and keeping people fishing more often during the year. This grant is going to evaluate up to 100 events. We're looking for a variety of program types. Excuse me, jump back first. So up to 100 events. I do want to stress that we've been promoting this grant that's going to take place the last several months. We've had about 100 events so far committed to the project, but we're not closing the door on participation, as we still need. We're looking for more events that are not just one-day-only events, but we're looking for events that might be a camp, for example, or a school program that takes place over multiple days. So that's hence the variety of program types. We want to be able to look at different types of programs to see which ones generally have a greater success. What we're going to do is to run 3 surveys for each event. The first one's going to be of the organizers, to identify how do they run their events, how they promote their events, what do they do on site, what type of follow-up support they do, to identify the characteristics of each of their events. Then we're going to, for an event to participate, they have to be able to give us contact information for their participants. And within roughly a week of the event ending, each participant will receive a survey to identify what was their fishing activity prior and what their intentions are going on after the event when it comes to fishing participation, and then what they thought of the event. Now, was it effective? What did they remember about the event? And we'll see if we can match that up to what the organizers were saying. And then we're going to go back to the participants 6 months later. If time allowed, if the grant's allowed, we'd go back 1 year later, but by grant limitations, we need to go back 6 months later and find out, did they really fish as they intended after the event, if they actually did intend to fish afterwards. But we want to measure, did their fishing activity increase afterwards? If they had never fished before, have they gone off on their own? Or do they need some more support, more instruction before they can become an independent angler? And with these results, we'd like to be able to identify which are general best practices and hopefully lay the groundwork for ongoing evaluations of all events, to be able to share our results and our process to R3 organizers everywhere, and with the intention of encouraging them to follow the same process with their programs. With that kind of wraps it up here. If there's questions after the event, get in contact with Lisa Parks, who's here with me now. She's the coordinator for both these projects. You also can contact me or Liz Ogilvie at the American Sport Fishing Association. Otherwise, Sam, it's back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. Okay, so we have one question. We'll take questions now. For your reference, again, we will be sharing out the PowerPoints from this presentation or the handouts. And I'm also going to copy the participants for their contact, or the presenters, so that you'll have the contact information. So we have one question submitted, and it's from Zoe Glass, the new R3 coordinator from California. And the question is, how are you defining success for project number 2? So Rob, that would be the data dashboard, and what are you calling success from that project?
Success is two major ways. Number one, having enough states that adequately participate so we finally have metrics on whether license sales for hunting and or fishing are going up or down. Right now, we don't have any detailed metrics. We have only data that comes out from the Fish and Wildlife Service approximately 2 years after the fact, and there's no way of breaking it down by type of activity, type of license, or even area within the state. So that's one. Can we actually pull this? Second would be the metric is, does it continue on its own? Because if people are deriving value out of having this evaluation information, states would then be willing to fund it. It costs about $9,000 a year. They'd fund it on our own. That would allow dashboards to continue so we can maintain these metrics down the road. So that's overall, that's the macro measure of success. And of course, each state may have their own measures or goals internally for dashboards.
Okay, thank you. Another question, Rob, it's regarding project number 3 about the evaluation project. And it says, Rob, what date will you be starting the event evaluations? And this is coming from Steve Marshall.
Okay, so you're saying which state will begin? Was that the question?
What date will you be starting the event evaluations?
Yeah, that is actually a little stickler on the side because the grants should have been released typically back in late February, but we can't start officially until the service begins. So at this point, with the delay, it will be very tough to include any events that occur in April, which is typically South Florida. So our apologies to Steve down there. But events in May, June, July will be the core of the project.
Okay, so the questions will go out to the event project managers, that first round of questions, early before that, correct?
They can actually go out at the same time, but again, if we get the paperwork in 2 weeks, we anticipate sending out the organizer surveys probably at the end of April.
Okay. All right, and Dan and or Andrea, one question about the email campaigns. You said that you can work with the states with their email service. Is there any email systems that you have found any issues with that if a state has it in place, it might be difficult to work with them? Any restrictions there?
I guess I would defer.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrea. I was going to defer to you anyway.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to say, At this point, we haven't really found any system that's more difficult to work with. And we worked with 5 states on the first go-around, and they each had a different system. And we just worked within the parameters of what we had. I can't say that there's any one system that presented a specific problem. We pretty much worked with each state and made it work for each state.
Awesome. So it's very customizable at the state level then.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, and then moving forward, just a general question for each of these projects. These are all one-year projects funded by the multi-state conservation grant process. Will these wrap up at the end of December, or do you expect that they might continue on after this? Like, is this a test period for some new methodology, or do you think that they'll continue on? And Dan, why don't you start with that?
Okay. So for our project, I hope that what we learned this year was a good enough foundation that when we roll out the implementation next year with the design, that we're going to have it fine-tuned enough that we really do spit out some wisdom that we can all use. Ultimately, we're going to wrap all this information up and put together a toolbox for states, which would be put together sometime early next year, that would identify perhaps the best mechanism for delivering emails, where we're getting the greatest lift there, what messages resonate, what timing strategies resonate, perhaps say something about infrastructure, because we know that there's still just a small percentage of states that have the database and licensing infrastructure required to even participate here. So we're going to put together a whole list of recommendations based on the full body of science that hopefully all the states can benefit from. If we find out that we still have lots of holes in the information that we need, we uncover something else that we didn't think about, and we need to dive a little bit deeper, then certainly we'd be up for doing something in the future. But I hope that we can get the good out of this project with this 1 year finishing up sometime early next year.
Fantastic. So if there's some states that don't have the systems in place right now, or they're getting a new licensed vendor in place right now, you'll be able to engage with them with even more opportunity in 2019, it sounds like.
Yeah, we certainly will, and we want to facilitate and encourage those states that are struggling to get the resources or decisions made to get the infrastructure in place. And I can only believe that if we can show some level of lift, like Georgia did with the RBFF study in the reactivation email campaign they did, if we can better define what that lift looks like and what the audience's response is to the messaging, then I think we're going to be also successful in stimulating some of those states to get to where we think they want to go in a quicker time frame.
Awesome. Thank you. And then regarding the data dashboard project, Rob, after the grant concludes at the end of this year, what's the next step, and can states still get involved if they can't do it this year?
Right. Well, we'll have 16 states that are partially funded by the grant, but it's open to all states. States can enter the project on their own at their own cost. States can actually build their own dashboard, and our staff here will work with them to provide the specs so their dashboard can be merged into the national effort. But the idea is for the grant states, as mentioned on Zoe's question, is that if the dashboards are successful in providing the monitoring and evaluation information that's so needed nationally, the value will be apparent, and dashboards will continue on their own through state funding, possibly partner funding down the road. So that's the idea, is that the dashboards will continue on their own if this pilot effort proves successful and of value. So it is a demonstration in that sense, and also is meant to provide the coordination to help. To do the national dashboard, we need to have very consistent dashboards across the states in order to technically merge them together. So we're providing that coordination function plus that pilot function.
Perfect.
Want me to jump on to the other grant? Same question?
Yeah, and on that, it's perfect. Steve has great timing. There's a question regarding the third project, and it's follow-up for Rob or Lisa. The list of events that you currently have, if the shortest program is a one-day event, what is the longest running event or program that you will be evaluating?
Because of the time limitations, this project here will probably be like a summer camp. It could be like a 1 week to a 1 month project. Any projects that go on, say, for the course of a whole semester, like a school program, we might be able to, would be very interested in doing so. We have to talk with them directly, but right now a semester-long activity is probably a little out of scope for this effort. And that's for two reasons, not just because the time it will take. The next full school semester begins at the secondary or primary level wouldn't be until the fall, and the grant will end when it's time to do the follow-ups. We need to be able to evaluate probably around 10 at least similar programs to get a fair assessment. Sample size of 1 wouldn't work. So short answer is probably 1 month or less would be the longest program we could effectively address, but we would be discussing what anyone might have in mind.
Okay. And then the greater impact, or after this 1 year project, what are the next steps for this final project, Rob?
Well, at the end, it's very similar to what Dan was mentioning, is that we'll put together the results, which would essentially be a summary of the practices that were identified statistically in the results as resulting in programs that have the greatest number or percentage of participants that go on to become independent anglers or more frequent anglers, and we'll share those. Some of the discussions we've had in the background, again, this being an ASA project, was if this works out well, it may become the basis then of criteria that industry may use to identify which programs to support. So that would be an incentive, not a stick approach, but an incentive approach for local programs to adopt certain best practices in return for greater support from potential sponsors. Then the broader R3 community would be encouraged to employ the results and maybe expand on it from there. But we will share the results widely with everyone to apply locally as they see best fit. Perfect.
So each of these projects are innovative in its own right, and they're contributing to the greater success of the R3 community. These have been some great opportunities for state agencies to engage here, and I thank everyone for participating and asking any questions. Thank you, presenters, for sharing these. We're very excited with the opportunity, and we look forward to seeing the results of these. I will be sending out the email with the presentations and the follow-up information so that you can reach out to these presenters if you'd like to engage in the project. If there's no further questions or any final comments from our presenters, we can close the show. Any last words, guys?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, and we hope you can join us on our next webinar, which will be at the end of April. Look to the R3 community for more information, and have a great day. Thank you.